Big If True is a video series where we explore wild and baseless claims found on the internet. Inside sources, whistleblowers, spicy takes, source, dude trust me bro. Whether it be anonymous posts on 4chan, WordPress blogs from pseudonymous figures, insane diatribes from random people on obscure internet forums, sometimes the real truth about the world can only be explained by a drunk homeless person on a public library computer. Today, we are going to cover the time when Anon came to 4chan to talk about corporations and the way they control and manipulate identity to become more like a product that can be bought and sold for the purposes of maximizing profit and minimizing political resistance to their acquisition of power. The subject of race will be discussed, but I find that it's not really in the context of talking about racial supremacy, but merely as an aspect of identity in and of itself. It talks about how it is possible that anything, even something that is generally good, can be weaponized and used for evil purposes. It really made me do a big think, and I think it will make you do one as well. Kind of insider here. I've written white papers for the United Nations, the Trilateral Commission, and for the cosmetics industry on replacement migration and population integration. First, the idea that, quote, the global agenda, unquote, is leftist or communist or somehow related to the neo-Marxism of the Frankfurt School is misguided. The organizations I've worked with for over the years see the number one priority as the maintenance of global economic integration and open markets. In collaborating with the intelligence community, I found their goals to be extremely anti-left and very concerned with maintaining global commercial institutions. This is the reason the CIA worked so far to defeat communism. It was a threat to the unified global market. What many of you have picked up on is the new left elements of the global agenda. But this is a misunderstanding. The system apparatus from 1945 to 1980 was the Keynesian welfare state, which successfully integrated potential opposition from the left and right into the system. The new left, born out of the Frankfurt School, strongly opposed the welfare state, which they correctly saw as a method of ensuring the working class did not succumb to revolutionary tendencies, and mobilized identity activism against it, women's liberation, black power, etc. The solution to this threat was the co-optation of identity politics and the movement of economic administration to supranational institutions, such as the World Trade Organization, the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and the European Union. That way, this new mobilization would not threaten the global economy, but could be allowed to manifest without state repression, as Nixon tried from 69 to 73. You're also picking up on the visual integration strategies of sublimating resistance to global capitalism. The left has been largely dealt with by focusing left-wing economic agitation into non-threatening identity activism. The right, and ethnic sectarianism especially, still poses a threat to global economic administration. Hence, the open borders and integrationist strategy of visual, sociological, and biological integration.
Okay, great, Ben. Now do Israel.
The end result should be an outcome resembling Brazil, which ties into my work with the cosmetics industry, if you're curious. A neo-homogeneous population of interchangeable human producer/consumer units that would be organized at a nation-state level, but be more easily integrated into international administration, lacking any pre-capital factors, race, ethnicity, history, religion, etc., that could serve as the basis for nation-level democratic agitation against supranational institutions. The current wave of nationalism was unforeseen because many expected demographic change had already progressed too far, and the left-wing elements had been too integrated into identity-based politics rather than economic populism. We are responding accordingly and advocating a framework of civic nationalism that can serve as a building block to international community by furthering the domestic task of visual, sociological, and biological integration of national communities. Civic nationalism, when successfully co-opted, will help further eradicate intranational divisions and coupled with pro-integrationist public-private advertising, propaganda, will progress the goals of creating a neo-homogeneous, non-racial society.
Hi! Impressive carrying skills, right? I got some Bud Lights for us.
Not necessarily dumb. Again, a lot of the thinking here is way too conspiratorial. It's just multinationals using their influence to establish and maintain a system that's mutually beneficial. I, for instance, was just a think tank writer who sort of started figuring out what the agenda seemed to be and writing white papers on how to pursue that agenda. I was rewarded for responding to the concerns of powerful people and was assigned for jobs. That's why I say kind of insider. The goal is to transform the nation-state into a local level of administration without primary sovereignty. In other words, the needs of maintaining global economic integration is primary, and national governments are local administrators who ensure that this primary objective is carried out. Nations cease having exclusive interests. This part, quote, people without any history to be easily organized in international groups without any conflicts, unquote, is quite accurate. Sectarian resistance is one of the biggest problems today. The ultimate goal is a global Brazil, if you will. This is extremely simplistic. What you're calling socialism is more akin to state capitalism on the global level. The division you're talking about was coming whether it was orchestrated or not. If you think your average college professor isn't just a naive ideologue, you're mistaken. The solution to the agitation and division that came in the 1960s/70s was to 1. Shift economic administration to the global level so it was no longer subject to domestic politics and fights between groups.
It's good to have an outpost of the council right here down the street from the State Department. We get a lot of advice from the council, so this will mean I won't have as far to go to be told what we should be doing and how we should think about the future.
And 2. The co-optation of identity politics, sublimating it into non-economic concerns. The goal was to depoliticize the economy and to de-economize politics. The ultimate goal, however, is a global common market and the elimination of pre-capital identity. Identity is to become a collection of commodified consumer objects, where identity categorizations lose their racial ethnic specificity and become objects that can be assumed through voluntary consumption. Avoiding threats to global economic integration. I did a lot of my work in cooperation with and for the cosmetics industry. I was basically a lobbyist. The goals I worked on there had to do with visual strategies of integration and how the cosmetics industry can participate.
This is me. This is me. This is me.
This is me.
This is me.
This is me.
This is me.
This is me.
This is me.
Effectively, the strategy had to do with the transformation of beauty and sexiness into several commodities of objective consumer goods. For example, instead of beauty being some subjective and uncontrollable attribute, beauty is to be directed into definable and acquirable commodities. Breasts of a certain size, buttocks of a certain size and shape, a specific and universalized facial construction. We worked with advertising and entertainment to highlight this new conception of beauty. This would create a more egalitarian beauty that anyone can acquire regardless of their background, and it would obviously, why I got paid, increase the rate of cosmetic surgery. And this is how a lot of the work goes on, different industries lobbying for personal profit while serving a larger process of universalization of populations with the ultimate goal of egalitarian interchangeability. This is also why I brought up Brazil. The vast majority of our efforts were aimed at Brazil, which was a test case of sorts. The result was one of the highest rates of plastic surgery in Brazil, success. But a side effect, which is actually really interesting, was the explosion of transsexuality. Because when female sexuality was transformed into several acquirable commodities, then men also became consumers of these commodities. That was unforeseen. The goal was to depoliticize the economy and to de-economize politics. Take economic concerns out of politics by channeling right-wing energies into, quote, culture war, unquote, politics, and left-wing energy into, quote, identity politics, unquote. This way, politics does not threaten fundamental economic change. Then, economic administration was to be separated from politics through moving economic administration to the supranational level, the World Trade Organization, the International Monetary Fund, the European Union, etc., and through privatization. The ultimate goal, however, is a global common market and the elimination of pre-capital identity. Identity is to become a collection of commodified consumer objects, where identity categorizations lose their racial ethnic specificity and become objects that can be assumed through voluntary consumption. Right now, cultures are associated with peoples and their histories. You can't sell, quote, whiteness, unquote, or, quote, blackness, unquote, to someone who isn't of that race. But if these racial ethnic categories were to become blurred and eventually eliminated, cultures would become consumable goods, i.e., non-racially defined people purchase their culture through consumer products. My closing thoughts. I find this passage specifically to be particularly bone-chilling. Take economic concerns out of politics by channeling right-wing energies into culture war politics and left-wing energies into identity politics. This way, politics does not threaten fundamental economic change. So often now, when I hear about some cultural scandal, do I think about this? When I hear about the outrage of Dylan Mulvaney in a Bud Light ad, when I hear about some movie or television IP being ruined by left-wing propaganda, when I hear about yet another national outcry over yet another supposed case of brutality, I wonder to myself, are we in some massive ant farm for humans on some alien spaceship? Maybe not literally, but that's how it feels every day more and more. At the time of January 20th, 2022, 40% of all US dollars in existence had been printed in the previous 2 years. At the time of this article, the United States has given more than $80 billion to Ukraine for their war efforts, while ignoring economic issues in their own country. Food prices have increased about 11% from 2021 to 2022. Where is the outrage about this? It doesn't exist. People are too busy arguing about cartoons, Star Wars, Marvel, or YouTube drama. Children are walking around outside glued to their cell phones, having several social media accounts. Adults are doing childish dances for internet clout. People's attentions are so destroyed that they need videos to be less than 2 minutes long with half the screen taken up by video game footage.
We're kind of like mystified because the price of like your Netflix, your phone applications, like all the stupid little shit poor people pay for. Poor people go out and buy bags of chips. Poor people order delivery pizza. The price of those usually doesn't go up or it goes down. And they're like, oh, it's still cheap to get a deep dish pizza. I could still afford a deep dish pizza and watch my Disney movies tonight. I guess I'm okay. I'm doing okay. Meanwhile, the price of like housing, education, healthcare, everything else that you actually need to like be like a solidified human and be safe, all that shit has gone up through the roof.
I don't want to be some old man getting mad at young people having fun with their toys. And I don't want to say that culture and politics doesn't matter. But there is a Vladimir Lenin quote that comes to mind. The best way to control the opposition is to lead it ourselves. Hopefully, the next time you come across someone talking about some new scandal or sensation, even if you agree with them, you'll do a big think about what we talked about in this video. I'm Big Thinker. Thank you for watching.